Hey, what's going on, guys? It's me, Jay. I want to talk a little bit about the series on Netflix, starring Rory Culkin and John Leguizamo, called Waco. And it's about the incident that happened in 1993 in a standoff between the federal government, particularly the Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms Administration, and the an outlier sect of the Seventh Day Adventists called the Branch Davidians, led by its leader David Koresh, and how it really made me look at the situation differently. It starts off with this one agent in a different is involved in a different standoff that also had happened in late 1992 um, in Ruby Ridge, Idaho. Idaho, between white supremacist or white separatist leader Randy Weaver and his family, and Randy Weaver's wife and child got shot in this particular standoff. Now, then it flashes to Koresh, and we get a little bit of glimpse of Koresh, and the kind of leader that he was. We don't really get a lot of background as to what exactly the Branch Davidians believe in. We only the series takes for granted that you already know about the situation and the allegations against the sect, which is selling and harboring illegal firearms, and also child molestation. One of Koresh's wives, and also that bigamy. That's another one. One of Koresh's wives was 14 years old. So that was one of the allegations brought against him. The other one, and the main one, was selling and harboring illegal firearms, harvesting massive amounts of weapons because the Davidians believed, according to their understanding of the Bible, that they were about to be in an apocalyptic struggle with evil, the powers that be. They were a millenarian sect, so they were stocking up with weapons. But one thing I found out that I didn't really know about the sect was that they really weren't harvesting these weapons because they were planning to attack the government, as the narrative about them had always suggested. They were getting the weapons so they could sell it, so they could pay the bills and keep the lights on, so to speak, at the Mount Carmel compound. So I'd always had the impression that Koresh's group was similar to Randy Weaver, who preceded him, and similar to Timothy McVeigh, who was subsequent to him, and who was sympathetic to his cause, and which is why McVeigh later went on 2 years later to bomb the federal building. I always thought, well, Koresh was one of those anti-government extremist, white right-wing extremists that you always hear about, like Weaver or like McVeigh and Terry Nichols. Turns out that wasn't the case at all, at least according to this miniseries. What are some of Koresh's beliefs? A little bit out there. Yeah, one of the ones that I raised an eyebrow at was the belief that all the men in the sect should be celibate except for Koresh himself, which means that every single child in the compound was fathered by Koresh himself. Unless like one of Koresh's lieutenants came in with a child that was disabled, and he already had a kid. But if you didn't already have a kid and you had a kid later, while you lived in Montgomery, chances are it wasn't, and you were a man. It wasn't your kid. It was the the kid of David Koresh. But anyway, this miniseries is based on two differing accounts. One is from the ATF agent, um, Jacob Jacob Velasquez, played by John Leguizamo, and the other one is from the young man who was a member of the Branch Davidians, Thibodeau, played by Rory Culkin, Macaulay Culkin of Home Alone fame, his brother. And you know, and from what I saw during this 51-day standoff in the series, I'm like, damn, I sympathize with the Branch Davidians because, first of all, um, John Leguizamo is sent in there to infiltrate the sect and find out what they're planning to do, if they're planning to attack first. And he comes back to his boss and says they're not planning to attack first. So there's no reason for the government agents to go in and attack before they attack. Yes, the Branch Davidians had weapons. Yes, they had this radical ideology about the end of the world. You know, yes, um, uh, Koresh's beliefs were a little bit wacky, but they weren't planning to attack anyone in the town. In fact, people in that town in Texas, they were highly respected in that town, and they weren't planning to um, commit suicide either. Like one of the agents thought that they would probably try to copy Jim Jones's tactics from 20 something years before, when he had taken his people, the People's Temple, to the country of Guyana, South American country of Guyana, and had them drink uh, Kool-Aid laced with cyanide and kill themselves. But the Davidians and weren't planning that, and Heaven's Gate, 3 years later, actually did that, and the government didn't try to kill them, over some rare Haley's Bob comment. I mean, comment. I mean, comment, not comment, like in YouTube. Comet, like the one that killed the dinosaurs, like that. A flying space body. They actually killed themselves, and the government didn't try to kill them. So I just thought the way they reacted to the Davidians was kind of rash. I mean, David comes out himself and he says there's women and children in there, and the government just starts shooting. And that's one of the things that, doing my research, I later found out that is a contention of the issue is who shot first. Was it the ATF agents or was it the Branch Davidians? And from the perspective of this film, it was the Branch. I mean, it was the ATF agents, and they threw the tear gas in, and the compound burned with women and children inside, including Koresh's own children. Now, it's watching this not only gave me a new perspective, but it got me really interested in the history of the sect and what this sect was really all about, and what, in general, the Seventh Day Adventist religion and ideology is all about. It doesn't seem like it's a religion that is um, motivated by militarism, so that kind of ISIS type stuff. It doesn't seem like it's racist in any type of way because there was African Americans there, Asians, Latinos. So it's not like Church of the Creator, Richard Butler's version of Christianity that that he based his book, The Turner Diaries, on, which is a book that is commonly read by a lot of white supremacists, Timothy McVeigh included. You know, one of the things that FBI agents look for is like, books and speakers that would determine a person's radical ideology, and among radical white right wing white right wing radicals often is the Turner Diaries, but David Koresh doesn't seem to be in, interested in that. It seemed like it was just a, a religious group they were doing some illegal activities as far as um, um, child molestation, and underage marriage and bigamy. But we have other groups that practice bigamy and polygamy all the time in our country, and the government doesn't arrest them. Probably arrest them like some of the extremist sects of Mormonism, like Warren Jeff, but they don't completely kill everyone in the compound. I just thought it was really fucked up. But as with everything, I try to get a balanced view about what happened. And it's funny because I watched this I watched this series on April 19th. And uh, April 19th, 1995 was the day that Timothy McVeigh did bomb the Murrah Federal Building in Mansion. So it was kind of like uh, ironic that when I watched it, it was kind of that same day. Not that McVeigh is somebody to be admired; he's somebody to be despised. He killed so many people in the worst domestic terrorist attack in history. But still, like, just to see, like, it's like with serial killers, like what, like I was saying about Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, what motivated Charles Manson to be this crazy serial killer, and what motivated even more so people to want to follow somebody like a Charles Manson. Obviously David Koresh was a very charismatic figure. He's his real name was Vernon Worrell, and I found an interesting parallel between himself and Jim Jones. Besides being very infamous cult leaders, was that neither one could really read and write really well, and they relied heavily on their memorization skills. And it does seem that way with infamous religious leaders. Like, not famous religious leaders. Like, you're not going to put like a mainstream person like a Billy Graham or Maimonides or whatever in a category with these guys, obviously, but with these infamous religious leader guys, these cult leaders, they seem never to be know how to read. So the reasoning, at least among their followers, is, well, they must be getting it from God because they don't know how to read. So it's not like they can read the scripture. So they must be getting it from them. Their messaging must be from divine inspiration, or they could just be making it up. You know what I mean? Like just because they can't read or write doesn't necessarily mean they're getting it from a divine source. They could be making it up. You know what I mean? But it is funny how none of these guys could read or write. And the parallel with Charles Manson and Koresh was their love of music. Uh, Koresh seemed to be like a little bit hypocritical in one point where he's so massively religious and he's so really strict and against sexuality and against that sort of stuff. And then he's seen in a when he first meets Thibodeau, he's seen in a bar playing My Sharona by the Kinks. You know what I mean. So it's like um, holiness for thee, but not for me. All these leaders are like that. And one thing they all have in common too is that they all do it for sexual gratification. Koresh wanted to marry everybody's wife, and Manson wanted to marry all these women, and even Joseph Smith back in the 1800s with the Mormons wanted to marry all these women. They all want to marry all of these young women. Like, like, is that what they do it for? Probably so. But whether or not Koresh had crazy motivations or anything, the question that this movie asks is, should the government be the one to decide that? You know what I mean? Like, especially as well, one of the radio DJs on the on the in the show asks not just the government, but like the ATF, the Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms Administration. They don't really have anything to do with the crimes, the really immoral crimes, besides selling illegal firearms that Koresh was accused of. You know what I mean? He was accused of statutory rape, he was accused of bigamy, but that's not really that's not really the job of the ATF to take care of that. And on top of that, it was a preemptive strike. You know what I mean? In our society, in our country, due to our history, our American Revolution basically um, started with an unlawful attack by government officials, in those days the British, on American civilians in the Boston Massacre. So we take our people take great offense to that sort of thing, and an attack on religious groups. We have religious freedom in this country, and they were religious fundamentalists and they were fanatics. Yeah, but so were the Pilgrims, and the Pilgrims founded one of the first two settlements um, that gave birth to this nation. So, um, in the time of Charles I, the Pilgrims and the Puritans and the Congregationalists were considered fanatics in the same way that Koresh and his guys might have been considered fanatics by President Bill Clinton in 1993. So, while I think his actions were reprehensible, I don't think that the massacre against the Branch Davidians was warranted. And this movie really showed me a balanced viewpoint of this of the of the of the attacks that I've never really thought about. And I like to look at things from a balanced point of view because, like, oftentimes when we're told something in history, we're told only of it from one side. We're not told the other side because history is written by the winners, not the losers. You know what I'm saying? So even the people that we praise in history, right? Like Andrew Jackson, right? We praise Andrew Jackson in history, but we don't really look at the pain and the massacre that he inflicted upon the Creek Indians, you know? So The point of it is, I think, is to like always remember to keep a fair and balanced look at everything, even when you're looking at somebody crazy like a David Koresh or even a Jim Jones or even a Charles. I would say a Charles Manson. you know, like keep an open mind when you look at certain things, and remember that events, topics, they have different sides to them. And I like that the series took the side of one government worker and the side of one of the members, because usually we always hear just the government side. We never really hear the side of the Branch Davidians. At least I didn't when I learned about the incident in school. And the incident when I went to school, it had just happened. I was in, you know, the, I was in like, I was a child when it happened. I was in like, the third grade. When I later learned about it, we didn't really learn about the specifics of it. We learned that this crazy sect had a shootout with the government that lasted 51 days and inspired Timothy McVeigh. And that was the extent of it. And because of its links to somebody like Timothy McVeigh, I always thought it was some right wing sect with right wing racist ideology. I learned something new from watching this documentary. So I highly recommend this, and especially the acting of John Leguizamo. He really showed his range because John is really known for like comedy. He played in Super Mario Brothers. He played in um, he's a stand-up comedian. He's Super Mario Brothers, The Pest, things like that. But sometimes, as is the case with this film or Romeo and Juliet, or um, Summer of Sam, that looks at the serial killer, David Berkowitz, the son of Sam, and the events of 1977, including the blackout, the clash between punk and disco, music stylings of CBGBs versus that of Studio 54. When he steps into these period pieces, he does really well in serious roles sometimes. So, um, yeah, give it a chance, guys. Peace. Oh, and it has Melissa Benoist in it. And as you guys know, I'm a fan of Glee. And Melissa Benoist, I used to love her as Marley in season season 4 of Glee. And I think she was in The Flash too. Peace.